Michael A. Stackpole's The Bacta War left a number of loose ends dangling, but the primary one is the fate of insane Isard, or Iceheart. Tycho Chelchu destroyed the shuttle that she supposedly was on, but was she really on that shuttle at all? Since the title of this book is Isard's Revenge, I would assume that the answer is no. While Stackpole's 4 previous X-Wing books all made the New York Times paperback bestseller list, I couldn't find any data that Isard's Revenge did, which sort of makes sense because it feels a little more niche than the other X-Wing books he wrote. So while reading Isard's Revenge, things definitely felt familiar to me, but not to the extent that Stackpole's previous book, and especially Aaron Alston's Race Squadron books had. I know that I read Isard's Revenge. I know that I read it more than once, but I think compared to the other X-Wing books, I didn't revisit it as often as those other ones. So, a brief summary. With Grand Admiral Thrawn defeated at the Battle of Bilbringi, the New Republic turns their focus on Prince Admiral Krenel in the Seotric hegemony. But when the rogues are ambushed in a system, they must team up with an enemy they never imagined would be on their side. In 1996, Bantam approached Stackpole about writing 4 more X-Wing books, but as we know, he had prior commitments. 3 of those were handed off to Aaron Alston, and he wrote just one, this one. So Isard's Revenge feels like a conclusion to the Rogue Squadron arc. We get explanations for why people are the rank they are. We get a satisfactory denouement for Iceheart. And we get a little bit of setup that Stackpole leaves for future authors to play with. The main way that I saw Stackpole as filling in the gaps in this book was explaining why Wedge is a general in the Jedi Academy trilogy. In the very beginning of this book, he accepts a promotion to general. He's told that he'll be able to stay with his starfighter unit, but he'll be accepting more responsibilities, maybe taking a role more akin to that General Psalm played in the X-Wing books, where he's a general, he's in charge of at least one starfighter unit, but in actuality he's commanding multiple units. Which makes sense. Wedge can't stay a commander forever, but I still feel a little bit of confusion about how New Republic Navy posts work, because in this book we're introduced to both generals running big ships, but also admirals, and admirals will be in charge of a fleet, but in the Race Squadron books, we had General Solo commanding a fleet. So Star Wars definitely has some wonky bits. And I feel like the combination of both generals and admirals in the New Republic Navy is one of those wonky bits. We see Corran again before iJedi, so before he decided to pursue his Jedi training. So he has a lightsaber, which comes in handy, and he gets inklings of things, feelings about things, but he's not able to focus his force powers as he will in later books. We also get a great escape scene with Whistler, Corran's astromech unit, and Gate, Wedge's astromech unit. I really loved it because I love getting to see the special skills that Whistler has because he was an astromech in Corsac. No one pays attention to a droid, which works in their favor because they are able to get out and get word to the New Republic of what happened to Rogue Squadron. Tycho's here. I felt that after the Krytos trap, Tycho doesn't really have much to do or much to work through, so he's here. He's a good pilot. He's a captain. And that's it. Then we also have Gavin and Asyr, who are working through some relationship stuff. They want to get married. They want to have children. which felt a bit like rushing it to me. I know that they've been seeing each other for over 2 years since they met in Wedge's Gamble, but Gavin's only 19. Asyr once again bumps up against other Bothans who are trying to dictate her life for her. And her first approach to that interference is to just be the absolute best pilot in the world so that no one could say she doesn't deserve what she wants. And when that doesn't work, she takes a totally different track. Stackpole sets it up that Asyr, unlike Wes Jansen, does not return to Rogue Squadron, does not let them know that she's still alive. She decides she's going to change her identity and change Bothan society from the inside out, which is a lofty goal, but seems really rough on Gavin, who's going to go through the rest of his life thinking she's dead. And while that sets up a lot of opportunities for her, I don't think any future authors used her in any way, so it's left open-ended, but you know it will never be resolved. We also meet some new rogues, although some of them seem to be introduced solely so we know a little bit about them before they die. Not sure how I felt about that, because in the X-Wing books thus far, the deaths that I felt were the most moving were the pilots that we'd really gotten to know. And when it's someone that we've been introduced to, we maybe heard a little bit about their background, and then they're dead, you're just sort of like, oh, shoot. Sucks to be them, I guess. Iella, Mirax, and even Booster Terrik get a bit of intelligence work to do in this book. I love the idea that while they were trying to figure out what's going through Isard's mind, Booster was just able to become Isard in a way, which is a little scary. Booster, please use your copious powers for good, not for evil. I also like that Mirax got a little bit more to do rather than just occasionally ferrying supplies for the New Republic Navy. She and Iella are an active part of the investigation here, and the final conclusion wouldn't have gone the way it did if it weren't for the three of them being able to figure out exactly what Isard was up to. And then we have our baddies. We have Prince Admiral Krenel. He was first introduced in the Rogue Squadron comics, and if I could find any fault with Stackpole's Star Wars books after the Bacta War, it's that the villains rely perhaps a little too heavily on knowledge from the X-Wing comic. Admiral Tavira in iJedi was from the Rogue Squadron comic. Krenel here is also from the Rogue Squadron comic. And while I feel like Stackpole did give us an adequate amount of backstory for him, you'd probably get a deeper sense of who he is and what a threat he is if you had read those two comic arcs. I believe he appears in the Mandatory Retirement arc as well as the Masquerade arc. He didn't want to get involved with any of the warlords, didn't want to get involved really with Grand Admiral Thrawn, but when Isard shows up and shows him a way to hurt the New Republic as well as grow his own power base, he's willing to go for it. And then working closely with Prince Admiral Krenel is Isard, except, surprise, surprise, this one is a clone. Apparently, when she was moving the prisoners off the Luzankia, she could only trust that to one person, and that person was herself. A clone of herself. And the clone moved all the prisoners off, and then Isard tried to kill her, shot her in the head. It did not kill her, and she has both memory loss from that period on Thyfera, as well as a complete legitimate belief that she is the true Isard. I'm not sure how I feel about a clone of Isard, though. I thought the whole point of clones was that no one knew that the Sparty cylinders still existed until Grand Admiral Thrawn found them on Wayland. So the idea that Isard had a clone, she made the clone before the Battle of Endor, and she just kept keeping the clone up to date until she needed to activate her. If Isard had a clone, like, how many other people could have cloned themselves? We know from Dark Empire that the Emperor cloned himself, and apparently Thrawn cloned himself. It's just too many clones for me. I'm fine with Isard making a resurgence, a return, but 2 Isards is perhaps 1 Isard too many. And then we have the original flavor Isard, who was not, as I suspected, on the shuttle that Tycho destroyed. No, she ran off and hid like Krenel, did not want to get involved with Thrawn, and now that Thrawn is dead, she makes a reappearance so that she can take out her clone, take out Krenel, and perhaps get her Super Star Destroyer, the Luzankia, back. I felt like the part of the book where Rogue Squadron had to work with Isard, had to assume that Isard had good intentions, was really the best part of the book. And obviously Bantam thought so too, because the back cover description basically just talks about that part. The problem though is that the ambush on Rogue Squadron and then their subsequent alliance with Isard doesn't happen until chapter 20, and there's 38 chapters in this book. So it felt like you had to wade through an awful lot before you got to the really exciting part, the really pivotal parts, which I found a little disappointing. I'm not sure that you could call it setup, but it was, in a way, set up for the return of the first Isane Isard. We see in the first chapter the Battle of Bilbringi from Rogue Squadron's perspective. Then they come back to Coruscant. Corran's reunited with Mirax. They make some Reichkate. There's a party, and one of the prisoners from Luzankia shows up and dies when Corran says his name. They figure out where he was from, go to that place, find more prisoners, but realize that it wasn't the true prison. Then get sent off to deal with Krenel, or dealing with Krenel, while Iella and Mirax are discovering that it's a trap. It is, in fact, a trap. 9 members of Rogue Squadron are picked up by Isard. 2 of them die, 2 of them live, and are picked up by Booster Terrik on the errant venture. And then it's the really exciting stuff. But that is an awful lot to get through before we get to what I deemed the really exciting stuff. I also felt like the apparent deaths of the 9 members of Rogue Squadron who were saved by Isard, as well as the 2 members of Rogue Squadron who actually were picked up by the errant venture, weren't really dealt with in any emotionally nuanced way. The 9 members with Isard believe that Wes Jansen and Asyr Sei'lar are dead. We have one chapter where Gavin feels really bad about it, and Corran's like, I know how you feel, buddy. And Wedge briefly is like, I can't believe Wes is gone. But we don't have any reaction at all from Hobby Clivian. If you've read the Rogue Squadron comics or even the Race Squadron books, you know that Hobby and Wes are maybe one of the ultimate Star Wars bromances. So to have everyone assume that Wes is dead and then not even get Hobby's reaction to his presumed death just felt sloppy to me. And Wedge's sadness over Wes's death wasn't really focused on Wes individually as a person, but, oh no, another member of Rogue Squadron that we've lost. And Wedge and Wes have gone through so much together that I also expected more there. And then in the end, when they find out that, no, Wes is still alive. We don't even see their reactions to finding out that he's alive. It's just after the fact. Corran says to Wes that, oh, Wedge was so excited to see you alive. Again, no mention of Hobby. I think that was possibly one of the reasons why I didn't reread this one with the same frequency that I reread the other X-Wing books. 2 separate, very upsetting events occur, and I just felt like Stackpole didn't want to deal with the emotional ramifications of that. It's a subject that I think is ripe for fan fiction because that's the only chance you'll get to write about how Hobby felt when he thought Wes was dead and how Wes felt likewise, and then how they feel when they're finally reunited, because you don't get any of that here. At first, when I was reading about the Pulsar Station, another attempt to redo the Death Star, I have to admit that my eyes were rolling back in my head. I appreciated, though, that it was a fake, that Isard knew what would get the New Republic all riled up, and she had it ready and raring to go. I felt too like the ending was a little too abrupt. In chapter 38, the last chapter, we find out that all the prisoners from Luzankia are fine. They weren't infected with a virus or anything. People have been reunited. They're going to reinstate the Luzankia and the New Republic Navy, and it's maybe going to be used for dealing with viruses, and maybe Rogue Squadron will be based on there, and multiple allusions to iJedi, basically Mirax saying that she's tired of looking for Corran, and the next time someone goes missing, it's going to be her. Yeah, I saw what you did there, Stackpole. Okay. And it just felt really fast. I wanted a little bit more time to slow down and wrap up with the characters, but chapter 38 was a mere 8 pages. I'm not saying you need to do what the Return of the King movie did, where you just have ending after ending after ending. But if this is Stackpole saying goodbye to the rogues, I wanted a little bit more. And then this is petty, but I don't understand what people see in Bothans. Their descriptions to me just read like bipedal cats, and I'm left wondering, okay. I like aliens in Star Wars, and I don't have a problem with these interspecies relationships. But Bothans? Imagine if my cat walked around on 2 legs and didn't have a tail. I don't get it. So, in short, Isard's revenge is a nice conclusion to Stackpole's Rogue Squadron arc. We finally bid farewell to Isane Isard. We get to see some different parts of the galaxy we haven't seen before. And I felt like from about chapters 20 onwards was really good, really exciting. I loved reading the dogfights. I loved reading their more commando type stuff. I thought that was great. Unfortunately, you have to wade through a lot of the book before you get to that pivotal point. And I felt like Stackpole wasn't really willing to deal with the emotional ramifications of that pivotal point, which felt a little disappointing to me. So next time I will be reading the last book in the Bounty Hunter Wars trilogy by K.W. Jeter, Hard Merchandise. I love her, but I don't get it. I guess, though, that's what furries like. So I guess there's something for everyone out there.